Davis is a registered dietitian and nutritionist who has worked in the sports world for the past 15 years. She just returned from Paris and joins us tonight to tell us a little bit about that experience. Kate, thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for having me.
So, what an exciting time. Can you start by telling us what it was like to take part in the Paralympics?
Just so surreal. It's just one of those things that if you weren't there, it's hard to explain, but it was amazing and just definitely one of those once in a lifetime things that you could experience.
Yeah, was this always a goal for you as a dietitian and nutritionist?
You know, it's interesting. I think if I admitted it, I would have said it was a goal, but it was one of those things that I didn't know if it would ever happen. And so when it happened, yeah, just so humbled and so grateful to have been a part of it.
Yeah. So what does a dietitian do at the games? We pay a lot of attention to how the athletes are training physically, but of course, food and nutrition is a big part of that. So how do you interact with athletes once you're there and leading up to the games?
Absolutely. So the dietitians on site are just one of the many people who are what we call ourselves the team behind the team. And so it's really our job to make sure that athletes are well hydrated and well fueled, both during their practice sessions and then, of course, going into competition time. So my job was to be on site within the village and answer any questions that any athletes might have about how they should be feeling themselves. And then I also was able to support one of the sports at their venue. So making sure that immediately prior to the game and after the games, they were getting their nutrition that they needed. So they were prepared and then recovering for the next time around.
And how does that translate into your work generally when you're not at the Olympic or Paralympic Games? Do you work with athletes outside of the games?
Yes, I do. I'm very fortunate to actually have worked in sports for the last 15 years. So I own a private practice and work exclusively with athletes. But this was definitely the largest venue I've ever taken part of as a sports dietitian. But many of the things that I tell these elite athletes, I tell athletes at any level. So it really does translate, across the board.
Yeah. So what are some of those things? What are the main things you tend to focus on, whether we're talking Paralympic or athletes here in Michigan?
Yeah, so one of the things, if you had been at the village, you would notice that the athletes were always carrying around some sort of hydration with them, whether it was a water bottle or a sports drink. There were refill stations all over the village and, across the Paralympic venues. And so that's a big thing. We talk to athletes about it because it's important from a performance perspective, and there's research on the detriments of dehydration on performance. But that's something really all of us can be doing. The athletes are focused on their performance, but for us, it can help us with focus and concentration and just feeling more awake during the day to do the things that we need to do. So that's a very simple thing, just working on our hydration and our fluid efforts throughout the day.
Okay, so hydration is key. What about regular people who are not athletes necessarily? What can they take from what you do teach your athletes?
Yeah, so surprisingly, there's actually a lot of overlap, things that we teach our athletes. So other than hydration, and good hydration would be things like, make sure you're eating regularly and you're not going too long between meals or snacks, because that's when we tend to get a little bit angry, right? Because we're getting too hungry and then we don't make good decisions with our eating because we're just so hungry. And so that's something that I think anybody can benefit from. The other thing we talk to our athletes about is the choices that they're making at meals and what they're putting on their plates. And the dining hall at the Paralympics was just amazing and had all sorts of great options. And that's wonderful, but that's not real life, right? We don't all have a dining hall like it is at the Paralympics, although it was so nice, right? But so talking about, are we getting lots of color on our plate and, fruits and vegetables and lean proteins and whole grains and getting lots of those sorts of varieties of food groups is important for athletes, yes, but it's actually really important for everybody. Again, whether you're preparing for the Paralympic Games or just trying to run your own race through life, it's important to get those good nutrients into your system.
All right, well-balanced hydration and a lot of color on the plate. Some good tips we can all use. Kate Davis, thanks so much for joining us today.